Okay, done. Okay, so the first application tonight is kind of complicated, but we can go into that after the presentation. This at 3500 Connecticut Avenue, and this is medium rare, and they are proposing a covering for an existing sidewalk cafe, a pergola style covering. And Swale, this is in Commissioner Siddiqui, this is in your SMD, so I will let you introduce the applicant and the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner McWood. So this is, as Commissioner McWood said, this is the Medium Rare restaurant at the corner of Ordway and Connecticut. I'm very excited about this application. They've been a wonderful neighbor for a number of years, and a really good neighbor that has helped a number of people through the pandemic. Also, when we had, if any of you remember the shooting, they were the ones that delivered food to the library. So it's really exciting that they brought this application to us. Just a little bit of background. I believe this application has already appeared in front of the Historic Preservation Review Board. Since they before the applicant went to the HPRB, they didn't come to the ANC last time. I know they're not on the HPRB calendar yet. I figured it was good to have them present to us just so we can have an initial conversation about it, since we didn't see the original plans. I also have had an email back and forth with Steve Calcott about what changes are needed and what potentially things might need to change to get in front of the HPRB. And one of the after we do the presentation, I can talk a little bit about what Steve Calcott said, some stuff about the space and how far it might need to be moved and stuff like that. Of course, none of this is definitive. This is just an email conversation, but I'm hoping that maybe we can have the presentation in the latest plans, and then I can sort of give a little bit of comment, and then maybe we all can have a conversation about what we think of the plans and what other stuff might need to be changed. So I'm gonna let Chris, are you ready with the presentation? So wonderful. So what I think would be best, Chris, is if you I don't think you need to go into too much about what the initial plans were. I think you should focus on the new plans. And then while you're showing us the new plans, as you point stuff out, just point to the fact that this was revised as a result of HPRB feedback. And then once you're done with the presentation, maybe I'll give a quick comment after that, and we can have commissioner questions. But we also have community members here, so I'd also like to have community members comment as well, if that's okay, Commissioner McWood.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I don't have host capabilities. Commissioner McWood or Commissioner Pagets, if you can give Chris host capabilities or sharing capabilities so he can go ahead and share his.
Sure, I can do that. Let's see here. Host. Okay. Whoops. Okay, you should be a host now.
All right. You can see the screen? Yes. Okay, awesome. Great. So hi, everyone. I'm Chris. Thank you all for your time and having me and hearing me out. Here's our proposal. Like you guys introduced, we are proposing a motorized aluminum pergola to cover the existing outdoor seating area. It would be 12 feet wide and 60 feet long, so about 700 square feet. And the main features would include the pivoting louvers in the roof, so you can get sunlight when you want it or shade when you want it. And there'd be recessed LED lights, which help provide a little more lighting to the area, and also fans to control the temperature a little bit more. So here's just a site photo. So this is looking down Connecticut Avenue. And then here's another little photo from across the street. This is another photo across the street. So this is Medium Rare Restaurant, and down here is the seating area behind these trees, and that's where the pergola would go, tucked away in this little area. So here's a little rendition of what it would look like. Over here is the pergola off to the side of the restaurant where the outdoor dining is. And then here's another photo, just a little closer up photo, so you can sort of get an idea of what the final project would look like. So yeah, like we mentioned, we did go in front of the HPRB, and some of the changes that we made, we changed the height a little bit. So the finished height is going to be 8'3", so that the majority of the profile of the pergola would be within this roof line, so that it would sort of blend in and not block anything. That was the design. So we changed that a little bit. And then the posts were going to be 6 inches by 6 inches instead of 8 by 8s. Just shrinking it a little bit and making sure that it's a little less heavy and a little bit less obtrusive visually, aesthetically. That's sort of the idea. So the main purpose, the main idea of this was to help create a better sort of outdoor dining experience, a little bit more functional space and environment for, you know, the community to enjoy. Whoever wants to go to medium rare would just be a great space for everybody. And also with COVID happening and sort of being over a little bit, just the popularity of outdoor dining has been massive. So the ability for everything that medium rare does for the community would be great to offer them a little bit more financial stability, having this outdoor dining to continue to serve the community as they have in the past. And so overall, all of this whole project would be a general win for the neighborhood, for the community, and everybody that goes to medium rare. So this is a photo of what was there in the past. There's this big tent. You can see this is allowed. They could have this tent up, but they have it actually taken down in anticipation of getting this pergola through permitting and historic and everything. You can just tell how less appealing this massive tent would be visually for everybody. It's not as elegant of a solution, and certainly a less meaningful and useful space to the area. So this is just another photo from the inside, so you can kind of get an idea of the space. So that's sort of what we're proposing to replace with this better project. So some final notes. This is the site plan. Yeah, here's Ordway in Connecticut. So their existing outdoor cafe is for about 1,000 square foot. So ours would be actually 2 feet shorter in width. So we'd be giving 2 feet back to the sidewalk, to the pedestrians a little bit. So they'd have a little bit more space to walk around on the sidewalk. So that's another pro of this proposal. So that's pretty much, I think, a good little introduction to it. But yeah, thank you guys for your time. Very happy to hear what you have to say and work with you guys for anything you think to be changed and make a better proposal and everything. So thank you guys.
Thanks so much, Chris. Can I ask a quick follow-up question first, just to start off? Mm-hmm. So you said that the tent was allowed. Does that mean that if they wanted to put the tent back up, they could at any time? And technically, it's allowed. It's HPRB doesn't weigh in on it because it's a tent, or does HPRB okay with the tent? You know?
I think because of Mark explained it to me, the owner of medium rare, but I can't remember exactly the details. I do know that it is allowed, and he could put the tent back up at any moment if he wanted to. Is something to do with how his cafe works. I think he didn't need historic, or I can't remember. I could ask Mark for those details.
I think it has to do with the fact that streeteries have been approved during, and so there are a lot of concessions. But a tent, I'm quite sure, would not be approved permanently and would have to be approved.
Okay. Cool. Well, okay, there we go. Yeah, HPRB, what you said, Commissioner McQuaid, HPRB doesn't review temporary structures. So, Chris, thank you for that, and thank you for pointing out how this is an improvement over the tent, and it's also giving back sidewalk space and other things. And also thank you for pointing out where you revised per HPRP requirements. The one thing I will comment on is, you know, I've been working with Chris closely to sort of read the feedback from HPRB to see where the revisions were. One of the other things that that Steve Calcock talked about in his email was potentially moving the pergola a little bit farther from the building. You know, and Chris, I don't know if you wanted to comment on that. It's okay if you don't want to, because I'm just springing on this to you right now. I just got that email in myself, and I asked him, like, what do you mean a little bit farther? Like, is it 8 feet farther? Is it, you know, 1 foot farther? And so that would, you know, I wanted to ask you if that seems to make sense to you at all. I mean, we're going to lose sidewalk space because of that, but I don't know if this structure can be a little bit farther from the building if required.
Yeah, so Steve had thrown out the number 2 feet. So shifting everything. So I guess just keeping the sidewalk space the same and just shifting it over 2 feet. And he suggested, you know, you could maybe use that as like an alleyway to sort of, you know, bring food in and out and serve. I did talk to Mark about it. He wasn't super excited about that idea. He did kind of want it to be where he liked it, where it was at. So yeah, I only briefly talked about that with him. So not totally sure where he stands.
Commissioner Siddiqui, can we put this in some context? Because this is a different situation with this proposal than we typically have. In fact, I can't remember another situation like this one where the applicant has actually already appeared before the HPRB prior to without coming to the ANC, and the application was denied by the HPRB, and that doesn't mean that they won't reconsider, but in my experience, changes to a proposal have to be pretty major in order to ask the board to reconsider. They don't have to do that. This wasn't a situation where the board suggested some ways to improve the project from their perspective and ask the applicant to go back and make some adjustments and then come back to the board. In this case, the board denied it because they said they couldn't come up with any. I listened to the video of the July meeting, said they really didn't have any suggestions to make. But I also heard from Steve Calcott, and he told me that he had talked to the applicant today and suggested that two different alternatives that the applicant could consider that would meet some of the major objections that the board had. And one would be, as you said, moving it farther from the building so that there would be perspective to the actual building itself, and the pergola wouldn't be covering up the building as the current proposal does. And he wrote me that it would be, what he was suggesting was 3 to 4 feet from the building. And then his other suggestion as an alternative would be to replace the steel pergola structure with a retractable fabric awning that could be mounted against the fascia and then could be rolled up when it's not used and unrolled when it needs to be used. And actually that latter proposal could be approved administratively, wouldn't have to go back to the board. So I don't know whether Steve talked to you all, Mr. Klug, today or earlier, but I know those particular suggestions were cleared with the chair of HPRB before they were made. So I think the changes that you've made, lowering the height about 15 inches, reducing the posts 2 inches round are positive, but I think that the board indicated that this particular concept was not something that they found to be compatible. So I'm sort of wondering if, more than sort of, I'm really wondering if you're not getting if you don't feel you're getting clear direction from HPO about this, because it seems like we're working within the same concept and the concept's been denied.
So Commissioner McWood, I can answer.
Okay.
You asked me initially if to provide some context. So I think one unfortunate thing is that the ANC didn't get to weigh in on the initial plans. And so the HPRB didn't have any opinion from the ANC at the time. And in fact, you said you listened to the video. If you do go back and listen to the video, they did wonder what the ANC would have thought. And they instructed the applicant to go back to the ANC. I think it's very
if they wanted to return, they said that they needed to go to the ANC.
And they do want to return. I think it's very important for the ANC to weigh in on this case, because I think this is exactly why the ANC is there. Like, we are the ones that have a discussion about what we want to see happen in our neighborhood. Sure, the HPRB can provide guidance, but they have to give the ANC great weight. I asked and I requested this, and I think this is a good idea to present into this, because I think the community hasn't had a chance to weigh in at all about this application yet. Not to the fault of anyone. It's just we didn't have a chance. And so
do we know why that occurred? I mean,
I
that
think
doesn't happen that we don't get.
I know, but I think it just happened that we weren't informed and it wasn't scheduled, which is fine. It's happened now, but I think this is the opportunity now that we do get to weigh in. And given the emails that have come in, Commissioner McWood, I don't know if you've counted them all. Commissioner Packets I don't know if you have counted them all, but the emails coming in the commissioners are at least like several dozen for the design versus maybe 2 not for the design. They're already updated on the HPRB website, so they're going to the HPRB as well. And I think this is the opportunity for our community to really understand the choices they make right now, right? And so, sure, Commissioner McWood, in your opinion, if the same design might go back to the HPRB, they might, decide not to accept it. But at this point, we as a community have a right, and we should be commenting on, what we feel needs to happen in our neighborhood. And if, regardless of whatever the HPRB does, we can only control what we're doing. So we probably can't present a resolution at our September meeting since it's not on the HPRB agenda again. But if it does come up, I personally wanted this conversation to start early just to see where the community was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've seen Commissioner McWood from the emails, and I'm so excited there are other people here from the community as well. I'd be willing to hear from them on what they think about the designs as well. But anyways, that's kind of the context, Commissioner McWood, why I thought it was a good idea to present. And we can take this more as a conversation rather than me trying to prep a resolution right now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I have read all the emails. And I know there is obviously strong support for medium rare, and there is gratitude for the owner's generosity and his civic engagement. He's been a good citizen during COVID, and I think everyone very much appreciates that. And the other sort of featured comments that impressed me was how important it is to everyone in the community that our businesses flourish and that they survive. So I don't think this doesn't have anything to do with damaging.
I had a third comment that was also in the emails, Commissioner McWood, though. People did comment that they liked the design.
Yeah, I didn't see that so much, but I'll take your word for it. The other 2 comments were what really impressed me. But so I think part of what our interest is here, not only to find a design that is compatible with the historic district and with the particular contributing structures that it would front, but also to find a way to help the applicant be successful. And when the HPO is talking to the chair and trying to come up with options, when they don't have to do that in this case because they denied the application, I think it demonstrates that they would like to be helpful. And I'm just curious whether the applicant is willing to entertain the suggestions that they're making, which would or get you to where you want to be. It would lead you to success. They are telling you, if you do this, the way I would interpret it is, we will probably approve this. And in fact, the retractable awning concept wouldn't even go back to the board. That would get approved at staff level. So I'm wondering if you are willing to consider these, because they will get you what you want. And they will respond to the neighborhood as well.
Right. Like I said, I did talk to Mark about it briefly today, if he would be open to it. He wasn't too fond of the idea. But if it's sort of like a this or nothing, maybe he would reconsider. But at a first discussion of a retractable sort of thing, or shifting it 2 feet off the building, he didn't really like that idea. But yeah.
Well, okay, I hear you. I would just urge you to try to work with them. I think it will. I think you will lead you to the path of success. And I think it's very important with HPRB to really listen to what they said about this particular proposal, and to try to meet them halfway here. But that's my comment.
Sure.
Can Commissioner Pagets also, if you can give me, oh, you made me a co-host. Commissioner Pagets, why don't you go ahead, and then I'll share one more photo.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming in and presenting this concept. And thank you to all of those in the community that reached out. I think we're close to 50 emails in support, and maybe a couple that aren't supporting it for reasons. I think the job of the Advisory Neighborhood Commission in this situation and scenario is not to take what HPRB is saying and HPO is saying, but to take what our community is saying, what our neighbors are saying, and what, you know, a business that's been a pillar of the community, and and stand up for them. This makes, you know, the reputation of Cleveland Park, we keep losing businesses up on that strip. And the same thing happens in Woodley Park with these awnings and this ridiculous, you know, interpretations of the rule says this, but, you know, it's been this way for 30 years, but you want to change one thing. And now the small business owner who's struggled for 2.5 years to survive this pandemic has to go through this bureaucratic nonsense that is like absolutely unnecessary. And this costs them so much money. And I just think that, you know, to continue down that path is just really ruining a reputation of what is a really great community. The letters in support and the comments that have been made by the community about this business should be a commercial that entices more businesses to come to Cleveland Park. And it's so encouraging to hear, and the participation and support is just phenomenal. So I think we're doing a disservice to the residents that we represent by, you know, just dismissing something outright, or making somebody keep going back to the drawing board over and over and over again, because this consulting costs money, right? And time costs money, and all of these things. So that's my 2 cents in my soapbox, and thank you.
I just want to show a plan that we approved for District Kitchen and also HPRB. So this is
this old chestnut.
Yeah, so this is right down in Woodley Park. And so, you know, I think there's no definitive written thing anywhere that says certain things are approved and certain things not. And, you know, a lot of this is to an extent somewhat arbitrary. And so I think if we can show community support for particular plans, I think that'll definitely have an influence. But I'll stop there. If commissioners don't have, oh, sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Baggett. I was going to say,
to note on that one, that went through multiple reviews. The owner of that business spent a lot of money and ended up just canceling the plans because he gave up because of the whole process just became too much and too expensive and too long and too confusing and complicated. So, you know,
that proposal was not approved by the ANC originally. It went to the HBO staff and to Commissioner Fink and to someone from the Woodley Park Community Association. And it was in the height of COVID. And it got approved. As I recall, it never went to the board. And then there were complaints. There was a lawsuit filed, I believe, by the adjacent owner. And then it eventually got back to us. And it was a very messy situation. But I don't think I don't think a lot of us are very happy with that one, but the circumstances were different.
Right, and eventually it got back to us, right? So I'm hoping that us going early to this and having early conversation helps. If commissioners are okay, we can move on to community comments. Is that okay, commissioners?
Yes.
I know Philip Eagleberger was trying to unmute, and I see Bob Ward has his hand up. Mr. Eagleberger, maybe you want to go first because I know that you should unmute first.
Yes, if I could. Can you hear me
Yes.
and or see me? I don't know.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Well, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know, but I'll be quick. I've been on the ARC for a number of years, and when this came into the ARC, their resolution was a kind of two components. One was that the documentation didn't seem to convey in very much detail how this thing is actually going to sit, how and where, and how close to the building. And that was, I think, one of the biggest concerns of the ARC. There were others on the ARC who felt that generally a structure like this in front of this building was just simply non-compatible. But I think the general consensus was that there were several who thought the structure was very handsome. But so my point that I would like to make is I don't think the documentation has really been very precise about where this thing will sit, where in relationship to the bays and the balconies. When you say it's a certain distance from the building, is that measured from the balconies or is that measured from the building itself? And so it seems to me there's not a document that conveys that very well, whether it's a 3D drawing or whatever. Now, I'm going to make a suggestion, which I have had to do in other historic communities. I'm an architect, and I've had to do this in other historic communities. And at first, it sounds a little outrageous, but it is a very effective method. And the idea is to basically on site put 4 posts that mark the corners of where the pergola will sit at the height it will sit, and have it sit there for a day or two so that people can look at it, take pictures of it or whatever. And for those who support the idea, I think it may possibly be a slam dunk in support of it. For those who are against it, if it's a problem, if it is a real obstacle, it'll support their case. It's just a very evidentiary based method that as I said, my first instinct was that, boy, what a ridiculous thing to do. But then secondly, it is a great thing. It just makes it a proof of sorts and kind of keeps people from backing into their preferential corners to either defend or attack. So that's my speech.
Thank you, Mr. Eagleberger. Bob Ward.
Hi, thank you. I like what Phil suggested. And it's good to hear that, when you read the report of the ARC, there was the paragraph that said that, this was just, nothing here would be compatible. that there was actually some opinions saying that the design was actually pretty good, but the submission of drawings and details was limited. So I think that's positive to hear. And I think when you listen to the HPRB, there was a lot of conversation that was positive as well. And there were some that said this is just not compatible at all. So I think getting this back to the board is a good idea. And I think I support the revised design. I think it's a great design. I think it really minimizes any bit of structure that you can actually see the building. If that's the primary goal of preservation, in this case, is to see the building, this does it fabulously. Far better than a sea of umbrellas, which is the present state and could be the present state, and way better than the tent, which as a temporary structure doesn't get reviewed by HPRB. So I think, this idea, so here's the other thing that I don't think was talked about during the presentation that I think is a win for the community, is the reclaiming of sidewalk space, that this pergola is actually smaller than the allowable cafe footage. And if I'm reading the plat correctly, and you haven't, if you want to put it back up, I think it's about 12 or 15 feet of sidewalk between the planter and the pergola posts, which is far greater than what's there now. It's a cramped space, and I'm sure you've probably gotten emails from people talking about that. So while HPO has a solution of moving the pergola more into the sidewalk, I think you have to ask first why and at what cost. So it's not touching the building, and you're eating up, by moving it away, you're eating up sidewalk space. I think there has to be a little bit of practicality here, and say, okay, you may not get the best views from every single angle, but you're going to be able to see this building pretty well. A building, by the way, which is not original, right? This facade was changed some indeterminate date in the 40s, maybe even after the period of significance. We don't know. But it used to be a residence, and then they turned it into retail at some point. So what you're preserving may not even be historic. We're not sure. I just think this is a great plan. And if there's flexibility on both HPO's side and on the owner side, I think there's a compromise here. But I think as far as stating what the public voice is, I hope that regardless of where this ends up, I hope the ANC supports this proposal, because to me, it's a good one. Thank you.
I don't think there's any doubt that this is historic. It's mentioned in the landmark application. This row of buildings was built by Harry Wardman. They were built as residences, and it's true that the ground floor was altered apparently shortly after they were built as residences to accommodate commercial. And then there were some changes that were made apparently in the 40s. But the HPRB certainly isn't questioning that it's a contributing structure to the historic district. But I just wanted to also agree with Phil Eagleberger. I think it would be very helpful if the applicant adjusted the presentation to show the new proposal. I don't think the drawings or the exhibits show the 8-foot 3-inch high structure. It appeared to me to be the same as the original presentation. If it's not, I'm surprised, because it doesn't look lower to me than what I originally saw. But and also if you could do it in do a site plan that shows the sidewalk, because I think the sidewalk distance is about 6 feet from the tree box, and I do agree that it's a great idea to pull that sidewalk cafe space back a little bit. It's already approved, so you don't have to do that. But that would provide a little more comfortable movement for pedestrians, particularly since the sidewalk cafe is so close to the metro station. But it might be helpful if you could show in plan how that space works, and the new dimensions, if in fact you haven't already made those adjustments. And also doing the site demonstration that Mr. Eagleberger suggested, I think would be helpful. But I would also suggest running a line from the ends of the posts across, so that people can actually visualize the height.
Commissioner McWood, the height was updated, but I think there was one
Okay.
thing that was left, Chris, right? Like the engineer was going to update the 9'3" stuff.
Yeah, so our structural engineer that signs off on everything. So we do have detailed plans. I don't know if you've gotten a copy of all of those that show all the connections and all those details that it seems like maybe
I
didn't get
forwarded to
passed
the
out to the
AD.
public. So maybe they didn't get to see all those details, but those do exist and they've been signed off on by, but our structural engineer's on vacation right now. So as soon as he gets back, I'm gonna get him to change that height, whatever it was on the plans, down to 8'3", which doesn't change anything structurally. So it'll take him 5 minutes. So
I would just say it's important that the thing be shown in context, not in isolation. That's what we're trying to get at, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other community members who would like to comment on anything?
I'd like to, sorry, I don't know how to put my hand up.
No worries. Please go ahead, Anne.
So I actually had some email traffic back and forth with Bob shortly before this meeting started. I don't have a problem with the design of the pergola, but the sidewalk has been a problem for 3 years. I don't know what sidewalk is in feet. So I measure sidewalk in sidewalk blocks, you know, those concrete blocks. And there is not 2 concrete blocks. There's 1.5 because the planters have migrated. And there was 1.5 for the entire time of COVID because the concrete footers stuck out through half a block. And 1.5 sidewalk blocks is nowhere near enough. It's just way too constricted. I walk every morning. This is within a mile of here, the biggest bottleneck to the sidewalk. It's just absurd how much public space this restaurant takes. And personally, I think there should be 3 full concrete blocks of sidewalk for pedestrians. After you take out the tree boxes, and after you take out the space where the restaurant is. I don't mind the pergola. I don't mind the restaurant, but you know, I was telling Bob, I was almost run over by a wheelchair because there was not enough room for a walking person and a wheelchair. There's not enough room for a bike in a wheelchair. It's just way too small. And I don't know that adding 2 feet is going to help, especially if there's nothing to keep the chairs from moving out the same way that the planters have moved out. It's just a real problem. And like I said, I live a block away, so I walk by this all the time. There is less space there than anywhere else in the area. It's about equal, a tiny bit less than in the construction site. It's smaller than the restaurants around the metro stop, you know, where the concrete bags are, the sandbags. It's just, they take up way too much space. And frankly, because this has been going on for so long, I don't trust that the owner cares that he's taking up all the sidewalk. So that's all that I had to say. I actually wrote this comment in already to Historic Preservation. They didn't get it until after their vote, but it's just the sidewalk issue is a problem. And I don't see that 2 feet more of sidewalk is going to be much help.
Thank you, Anne. Anyone else would like to comment?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask for a question here.
Mhm.
Like the sidewalk cafe though is permitted to X amount of space without any of the improvements over it, right? Swale, I believe that was in the file.
I think so, but I'm not, again, I haven't read up on those
And
regulations.
that's a DDOT public space thing.
Yeah,
that
it's a
years
DDOT.
ago, like way before COVID. So I think we'll need to see what that's about.
Oftentimes, it's helpful to go back and see what exactly was approved, because oftentimes there is sidewalk cafe creep. And there are some standards about this to ensure that there is at least minimal safe passage for people using the sidewalk. And there's a certain dimension from the tree boxes, there's certain dimension from the curbs. So we can go back to DDOT public space and review what in fact was approved.
Yeah, I'm worried that like some of the accoutrements too, with like the planters and like the footers and all of that started to a little bit more, and then the table started to creep. So I think if we're abiding by what was originally approved, we might be closer.
Well, pergola goes in the right direction.
Yeah, and that would provide the fence.
Yeah. Okay, Zoom user, I'm sorry, I do not know your name, but your hand is up. Feel free to unmute and ask your question or make your comment.
Could they identify themselves, though, please?
Yes, please identify yourself because it is a public meeting.
Hi, my name is David Kay. I too am on the ARC. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, okay, I can start my video now too. Yeah, and so I just wanted to reiterate what's been said and relative to this prior conversation about the creep, the importance of having the proper documentation in terms of plan that's accurate, that shows the accurate footprint of the building, including the bays and where the sidewalk is, and all drawn exactly to scale of actually what's out there. Because as Phil said, when reviewing the documentation, there was a very sketchy plan that didn't seem to agree with the highly technical documentation for the pergola itself, and didn't actually show where the pergola went. So I think that would help alleviate a lot of angst that you can hear in this idea of this sidewalk, of the cafe sidewalk creep, because no one's exactly sure, well, where is it sitting? Hence Phil's recommendation for the posts. And I also want to address the issue of sort of this incredible bureaucratic expense and everything. And there is a well-known documented process that was skipped in this case. There's a normal process of things coming before the ARC and the ANC first before going to HPRB, and that was skipped, and that drives, that upsets HPRB and puts it in a bad light from the beginning when the documentation isn't complete. So I'd recommend, wherever this is going, that again the documentation shows exactly what is going where, very clearly to scale with measured drawings with accurate dimensions. Personally, I think the pergola structure itself is a nice structure that irrelevant, not relative to the historic aspects of it. I mean, it's better than the tent for sure. So anyway, just wanted to reiterate that there is a good process, that the process, when it's followed, is not too expensive or onerous, and it doesn't involve like a media campaign to get the community to get behind a well-respected business that's well-liked. But we're here, and I encourage everyone to move forward with the most accuracy as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Robin?
Hi, thanks. I just have somewhat of a quick question to Anne's point. I too walk there every day. I walk my dog there, and it is crowded. It doesn't bother me, but I certainly understand Anne's perspective. So I'm trying to understand if medium rare follows HPRB's advice with 3 or 4 feet off the building, does that mean they eat into the sidewalk more, or are they saying it needs to be a more narrow area for eating?
More narrow.
Which one?
More narrow.
It has to be more narrow. Okay.
Well, then there's no place left for outdoor seating then if it gets narrower. So I think if we, right now they're asking them to push it farther out. They're not saying, you know, necessarily decrease structure or whatever. So it's and if this is not allowed to be built, the current status quo stays, which is less than it would be if the current plan is approved.
Or they could consider the option presented by HPO, which is a retractable awning that could actually be attached to the fascia, the building, so it would be lower.
That's, I don't know what kind of cost that is, but I just wonder what happens when, I imagine the community, to Anne's point, would much more oppose taking more of the sidewalk. So when the community is up against HPRB, I don't know who wins. I'm afraid HPRB, where I'm afraid in that case, nothing happens. I also wonder how, I hate to bring this up because Biblos is one of my favorite restaurants, but how does their awning, is that compliant? I mean, I find this structure much more attractive than Biblos, but I love Biblos, so I don't want to even criticize them. I don't mind it there, but it's just funny to me. Is that compliant when this looks like it's going to be a much more elegant structure?
I don't know, Robin, if you missed the district kitchen picture that I showed you down in Woodley Park.
Yes,
but
I saw that.
So yeah, it's, I mean, as much as we want to say there are rules and there are requirements, it's arbitrary. And so what we as a community can do is, the best thing we can do is fight for what we want in our neighborhood. And say that we're willing to make these trade-offs and we're not willing to make other trade-offs. That's why the ANC exists, right? Otherwise, why would they even comment on it? We just get the experts to do it and that would be fine.
Right. So anyway, I've written my letter. I fully support medium rare doing this. I would not want more space taken out of the sidewalk. I think that would be a problem, but I hope it can be approved. I think they deserve it, and I think it would be great for the neighborhood. So.
Okay. I don't see any more hands up, and we're not deliberating. So is there anything further, commissioners? Or let's go back to the applicant. Is there anything else the applicant would like to say?
Not right now. No, thank you.
And Chris, I will reach out and we can take some of the feedback and continue working. Sorry, Commissioner Pagets, I keep interrupting you.
No, it's fine. I just had like one other point of, with the pergola structure, you're putting ceiling fans and like potentially like heaters and stuff under it. Whereas if you had that little flap down, whatever awning thing, that wouldn't be, like, there would be no kind of temperature control other than like maybe some ad hoc, probably not very safe things, right? Chris, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure of what kind of a retractable awning would look like, but I do know, yeah, we can do heaters and fans and lights and stuff with our design.
Okay, and that would make the occupant comfort greater and therefore increase the amount of
the usefulness
time. Yeah,
right.
that they would be able to generate revenue from this project.
Yeah, I think that's a discussion that I hope the Mr. Klug, you have with HPO, because they can point you to examples. I think there's some retractable awnings actually in Woodley Park. And I think they have heaters, but I don't want to make any particular cite any particular location. So, but that's something that I would urge you to talk to Steve Colcott about.
I would just say that those bays and balconies present a real challenge to that solution, I'm afraid.
To the retractable.
Yes, because, you know,
Yeah.
those are occupiable balconies. So do you put the awnings up at the 2 second-story height to cover those balconies? Or are they down at the you know, the base of those balconies? That then is a very awkward connection. I think that is not as elegant as a solution as the freestanding unit. That's my opinion. So this is Phil Eagleberger.
I'll also add one more thing. With those awnings that come down, I do know they have a significant amount of drop. So I'm not sure there would be the clearance for something like that, unless, like you said, you go up to the 2nd floor and then come all the way down. Whereas our beams are aluminum and they can go straight across horizontal.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could get clarification on these things for both Woodley Park and Cleveland Park, because it seems like it's a different thing for each, even though they're literally sometimes the same and next to each other. So.
Okay, if that's, we've had a robust discussion, a lot of participation. Thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you to Mr. Klug for coming tonight. Also for the ARC members appearing. That was very helpful. So Commissioner Siddiqui, you will get back to us with what you want to suggest here. I know it's not going to be on the HPRB agenda for September, but I don't know going forward. And is there anyone here representing 3722 35th Street? I don't want to close out the meeting without. So Commissioner Siddiqui, will that be postponed?
I have no idea, Commissioner McWood. I did email the person that was on there, but it was a while ago. So let me go back and check my email. But like you said, there's no file on the box thing.
No, there's nothing. Yeah.
There's nothing. And so I had an email when, you know, I don't remember how I was informed about it, but I sent an email out about it. And so I don't know, it might be postponed, but I'll follow up with you and then I'll let you know what happens.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everyone. That turns out, medium rare turns out to be the only application that we need to review tonight. Thank you all very much for participating and have a good evening.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.